2010, becoming a product manager in Houston, I couldn't find other people to talk to about product. And even at that conference, there were plenty of developers, plenty of Scrum Masters, but no product owners.
You're tuning in to another episode of Forging the Future. And today I'd like to welcome Wade Pinder to the show. Wade is the principal product consultant at Improving and a co-founder of Houston Product Community and a big contributor in the Houston tech ecosystem. So welcome to the show, Wade.
Hey, Chris, glad to be here.
By the way, thanks for coming to speak at the Venture Studio.
You're welcome. We see each other all the time, but we've never had a chance to chat. Nothing like on a podcast. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's one advantage of the podcast is you do get to sit down with someone and actually have a more in-depth discussion for
it's great
30 minutes.
I've really enjoyed the talks you've had.
Yeah, thanks for listening. You and my mom.
Yeah.
My two listeners.
There's plenty of interesting people in the ecosystem I've always wanted to talk to. And I'm like, now I don't have to talk to them. Or I will know odd things about them when I do run into them.
Speaking of which, let's get into your background. And I know you've been pretty active in the ecosystem. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about how you got into that.
Yeah, sure. So I moved here to Houston in about 2008 from Maryland originally. I was kind of like an 80s computer whiz kid before there was a career path for us. So you may know that, but not growing up in Texas, it's hard to believe not every place has engineers all around. So I grew up in a very rural community with farmers and didn't know, like I saw a computer for the first time in 7th grade and was like, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life. Was
that at school?
That was at school, and that was, we didn't have computer clubs or even computers in the school at that time. Someone had brought a Timex Sinclair 500 in and programmed with our science teacher a tank that rode across the screen. So they showed that go across, and then they changed something, and then went across at half the speed. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Did you, you just did that? And I was in, that was kind of my hook into that. But I didn't quite have a career path for us then. So when I went to college, where I happened to go to college, you had to major in math and computer science at the time. This was 87. And I got to calculus 3. I was like, nope. So I took the computer classes, switched to business, and have been kind of a generalist since then. It was just computer programming back in those days. If you remember, you just wrote programs, automated stuff. You didn't think of them quite so much as products.
So you had
today.
A programming class at college?
Several of them.
What languages were they teaching back then?
So Pascal and C and stuff. But what I really found business acumen with was DBase, Clipper, Foxbase Pro, those type things.
Database languages.
Yeah. So I worked for a bank, when I got out, and I started automating a lot of their systems. That was not my job. I was like a loan officer and an auditor for a while, and then a credit analyst for several years, but continually wrote their, automated some of their systems and ended up selling those to other, regions of our bank. And that was kind of my first taste of product, and but never was it my day job. So
was a computer science degree is what you ended up with then? Or?
No, business degree. Yeah, and don't even have a computer science major. Took a lot of computer science classes.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then how did you get from that to leading product at blinds.com?
So when I was at the bank, we started having IT people. And they would come to me with questions, and they left making more money than I did at the bank. And I'm like, wait a minute. So that's where I got into computers full time, working just as a field technician and then managing a help desk.
Like I can do that.
Yeah. And that the company I started managing or working at a help desk for and ended up managing that as it grew was headquartered here in Houston. And I wrote all kinds of small programs for them on the back end or on the network, and eventually worked on more and more programs and products and joined their application department down here in Houston. That's where I became an application analyst, which
Is
is
that
kind
what
of
moved you to Houston then?
that is what moved me to Houston. I got on larger and larger programs and products, and they had a key person leave that put some of the financial stuff together every year. And they asked me if I would take that on because there was really kind of nobody else to kind of take that on, and kind of reverse engineered his process and automated that going forward. And they're like, hey, why don't you come on down here? So that's when I started doing software development. Full-time software analyst. I am very careful not to say that I was ever a software developer. I wrote programs, and while I was there, we had a new CIO that moved here from Silicon Valley, and in evaluating the staff and everything, when he asked me, about what I did, he's like, "Oh, you're a product manager." So I'm very much a generalist, or have always been. I like lots of different topics, learn lots about lots of different things. And, I went back to my desk, Googled what's a product manager. This was in 2010. And Google came up with, we assume you mean project manager. And I had to say, no, I really mean product manager. And there wasn't much resources there for me at the time, which we kind of have the opposite of that now. It's a proliferation of resources. It's almost it's too much.
Too many people calling themselves product managers, you think?
Right, yeah. And too many people, with product management, a lot of it is about understanding the tools and the techniques available to you and when to apply them. And people often write those type articles or content as if their environment is the way to do it. So people read that and
How would you describe, for those that don't know, like what's the difference between a project manager and a product manager?
Yeah, so oftentimes when I say product, people hear project. Product is about the what and why of what it is you're building and working with a software development team to implement that. And it's constantly changing. Once the internet came out and Internet Explorer 6, or whichever version it was that updated frequently, that kind of changed the game, that software was continually updated instead of back in my day when they shipped it with disk or CD-ROM, or your day, right? It's like, hey, this is it. So whatever bugs are there, that's what you're stuck with. And so it's really about every couple of weeks, month, or whatever your development cadence is, delivering the best value of what the engineering team can execute on. Where project management, you think about your golden triangle, right? Your time, money, scope. And when you know exactly what it is to build, that's a great thing for project manager. And how I kind of talk about that is project is something you can kind of walk away from.
Or complete.
Right, or complete, or right. And people are using it, right? But you don't have to stay there. Product you're married to. Like Uber, when Uber gets released, there's constant updates, constant things going on, new features, new markets, right? Maybe they had the idea for Uber delivery when they put Uber together, but it was years before that saw the light of day. So it's prioritizing the types of things that you could do and actually holding back to the right time to add those features in.
So the Silicon Valley guy came, kind of introduced you to the concept of a product owner.
Yeah.
You're working at this other company, and then somehow you got to Blinds.com.
Yeah. So around that, when I moved to Houston in 2008, we had agile software development training, and I kind of fell in love with it. Like for me, it was just a framework for common sense. So many software projects back then, right? You know all too well, right? It's like you spend 3 months putting together this requirements document and like, this is exactly what we need. Everybody in the business has signed off on it and okay, go. And it's like, you have a year to deliver on it, and 6 months in, yeah, everything's going great. And we got the database almost done. And like, now we're working on the business logic layer. What's it going to look like? I don't know. We'll get there. And then as you get closer to the launch date, everything kind of falls apart. And then when you actually do launch it, it turns out this is not, from your customers or the users are like, this is not what we need at all. But it's what you told us you needed, right? So that was kind of my introduction to Agile, and I love that, with the constant ruthless prioritization of what the features are and the continual delivery of those features. So why that factors into the story is there was a recruiter that called me up while I was working there and asked if I'd be interested in a job. And I said, no, I'm pretty happy where I am. And they said, oh, that's too bad. They would be very interested in your Agile experience. And this was 2012. And I was like, well, that's a pretty progressive company if that's like what they're interested in and everything. And I asked her, I'm like, how did you find me? So this is before everybody was kind of doing LinkedIn searches to find people. And she was like, you never came up as the top result for anything I searched for, but you were the second result for everything.
Interesting.
And that's like proof of the generalist type thing.
Right.
So she's like, I just had to kind of reach out and see who you were. So I was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and talk to him. That turned out to be Blinds.com. It was a wonderful company. I made a very quick decision and switched over to them in 2012, came on as a product manager there.
What was you made a quick decision, right? I mean, was there like a main factor of that?
Yeah, it was a culture there.
Culture?
Like you hear, like there's a book the CEO wrote called Lead from the Core. Mm. I'm very involved, not mentioned, but very involved in chapter 3 of that book. And a lot of the meetings
and
they
the
talk
CEO's
about
name?
Stuff. Jay Steinfeld.
Steinfeld.
Yeah, well, he'd be a great guest for you too. But when you walked into the place, it just felt different. Like lots of people were fun. The energy, or lots of people seemed to be having fun. The energy was really high. Very creative people, creative environment, and I went through a round of 6-7 interviews in the course of 3 days. Just happened to be on. Took a week off as my wife was going back to school. She's a teacher and was watching the kids. And I just happened to have the time. I didn't have to sneak away from work or anything. And within the course of 3 days, talked to all of the stakeholders, some of the subject matter experts there, and it was just a great fit.
It's an important point, even especially for startups. And something that I missed in the beginning was just being very conscious about building that culture and hiring for culture, and then seeing, how it then attracts talent, especially if they see that culture as their tribe. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I've got to be a part of this. I can already tell. I feel connected to all these people that I've interviewed. I love this environment.
And what was cool,
up,
like
right?
for me, I didn't have to change anything. Like they were already there for me. So if, top of my head, right, improve continuously, experiment without fear of failure, speak up and enjoy the ride. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. So I remember Jay walked me around at the end of our interview, or in the middle of our interview actually, and walked me around the office. And when we got back, asked me like what I saw, what I observed and everything. And it was essentially the core values is what I described to him. He's like, that's right. That's part of who we are. And anybody that we bring on, they have been trying to hire for that position for like 6 months, a year or something.
Really?
Yeah. And I never will forget, like the last question he asked me was, do you think you can control your happiness? And I'm like, man, it was such a thought-provoking question, right? So,
what was he getting at with that question?
That you could not just settle, but change your environment, change your habits, change your things, right? And, my answer was like, yeah, you can't you can't control your feeling. And I'm like, are you asking me thinking happiness is a feeling or like a state of being? And he's like, well, more a state of being. And I'm like, yeah, you like your feelings, you experience them, and they're neither good or bad. They just happen. But happiness, yeah, I think you can take steps and do that. And to some degree, you can. But when it got time to, for me to ask questions, I asked a lot of questions, but I ended with, do you think you can control your happiness? And that's where I kind of got more to, his answer, of course, was yes to that. And got to share that philosophy
I heard
behind
it
that.
kind of the other way around, I think, at first when you said it, like control, like, can you like tone down your happiness? Like, can you keep yourself,
no.
like you are just such a happy guy. Can you like get a hold of yourself?
No, this was like,
so it's more like, can you
create a state of being
and,
maintain,
attain or just architect or
channel
exactly. Interesting.
And I had 4 great discussions with each stage of the interview, and that turned into an offer, and made a quick decision. But it was walking in the building. Like, they had, one of the fun things they had there was movie posters where everybody's face was photoshopped into a movie poster. And after you had been there a year, that was the gift that they gave you.
Put one in?
Yeah.
Which movie poster did your face go into?
Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is one of my favorite movies.
You were Scott Pilgrim?
I was, I had the sword, I had the flaming sword and everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I know Blinds.com is one of the Houston success stories, right?
It is.
So they went on to, I guess over, I don't know, how long was it, 5, 6, 7 years? Or
while I was there?
That they that you were there.
Yeah, so I was 2012 to 2020, so 8 years, and then Home Depot bought them middle of 2014.
And you joined them at like how many people?
So I think it was about 120 people
at the time
when I joined them. Yes, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they had their e-commerce system that had kind of gotten them to that point and sold window blinds. And this is covered in the book, so I can mention it. Then they came up with their new system, which sold customizable product called Audubon, and I came in as the product manager of that.
So fast forwarding ahead, then you were here in Houston judging competitions and things like that at Station Houston, and somehow we crossed paths.
Yeah. So around 2015, 2016, I was contacted out of the blue by some people from Station Houston, didn't know what that was, asking me if I'd be willing to mentor. And my first thought was like, who are you people and how do you know to call me? And then my second question was like, it's like a startup incubator, but what would you call it? What would you call Station Houston back in the day?
Yeah, it was one of the first startup development organizations. Right.
Yeah. It wasn't an incubator or an accelerator. It was a space, but it was great. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the people there. But they asked me if I'd mentor, and I'm like, I don't know the first thing about like raising money, and like I had a side business, but I would not necessarily call that a startup. I'm like, I don't know what I would relate to them. And they said, no, we got plenty of people to talk to them about that. It's actually building product and executing on product development. And I'm like, oh, really? So after, I went in and did that a few hours every month. And after my first 2 sessions with entrepreneurs, I was like, oh, yeah, they don't understand that they're wearing the product hat. I hate to call it mentoring. I really do. Like what I'd say is I'm willing to give you an hour of my time as I can. And sometimes that will turn into, in a few cases, year-long relationships where we've had several conversations. More often than not, like 80% of the time, that'll turn into something that changed the trajectory of their path in a much better way. And then sometimes 20% of the time, it just doesn't connect at all. And that's how it goes sometimes. So I always tell people, instead of like trying to find a mentor, just try to find somebody you can talk to for an hour, know what questions you want to ask them, And the value of somebody like that is they can help point out your blind spots, like you're not aware of this or that in that toolkit of product that you're not thinking this, or you're kind of blind to that.
What bothers you about the word mentor? Or calling someone a mentor?
Well, it comes with a lot of strings attached, and it's like, tell me what to do. Like,
it's a presumptuous,
right?
Or,
it's like, tell me what to do, right? And almost run this part for me, or do this part for me. So I
come to me, little Padawan,
right?
and I will teach you how to be a Jedi.
Like, I'll actually say, I'll see that starry look in people's eyes sometimes, and I'm like, stop looking at me like I'm Yoda. Yeah, Grogu. But I'm like, you got to stop looking for Yoda. We're just having a conversation. And, generally there's a problem going on. And then I spend 20 minutes listening, 20 minutes asking probing questions, 15 minutes just laying out option A, B, C. Like, here, what I here's A, B, C, right? And then the last 5 minutes, I literally say, here's your problem back. What are you going to do based, and you don't have to decide,
input,
but based on this input, what do you think you're going to do?
I like that approach. No, I think you're right. I mean, you're going to present some options in front of them, and it's up to them really to sift through the sand. And is there a nugget of information there? And do you want to use it or not?
Right. And then I'll say, this is it. Like, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we want to talk again at some point, that's fine. But don't call me, a week, 2 weeks from now, wanting, well, what about this and what about that? I'm like, that's it.
I think that is something also that a lot of founders need to get better at, and because they make mistakes on both sides of that, where they get a lot of advice,
right,
and they need to understand that it's not all advice you need to take.
No.
You really need to filter it. A lot of people have opinions. It may be the wrong advice.
Right.
Your challenge is like, which is the right nugget of information that you want to take. That goes all the way down to whether it's your lawyer, right, and what they're telling you.
You're the entrepreneur. You're the CEO. This is
you have to weigh
right?
the risks. The lawyer is there only to consult with you and tell you what he sees are the legal risks of some part of the contract or the decision or the language. And as a founder or entrepreneur, you decide, is that risk okay?
Right.
Or do I want to keep arguing with, the Fortune 100 company you're talking to and maybe risk losing the deal when this thing that may or may not happen that the lawyer is worried about will ever materialize? Like, what's the chances of that happening? I'm going to take that risk. But so many of them just kind of have the wide-eyed, this guy knows what he's talking about, I have to take what he says as gospel and then act on it. Right?
And, I think product is a good metaphor for that, because oftentimes your customers or customers, stakeholders, people in your own company demand like a feature. It doesn't mean it's the right thing to add in there.
Or at that point in time.
Yeah.
I see so many of them try to build version 3.0. And they haven't built version 1.0. And they need to get it out there, because you don't know what you don't know yet.
Is this thing even going to get any traction? Is
exactly.
anybody even interested in this?
Did they even use that feature you thought was so important to have in the product? Tell me a little bit about this concept of communities of practice. I've never heard of that before.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was at an Agile conference that Improving was throwing about.
Improving is the company
the company I work with. So it's consulting. Yeah, and I've worked with them in the past. So we're very familiar with them, and they would invite people to these Agile conferences they would have once a year. And one of the breakout sessions was on concept of community of practice. I had never really heard about that before. And it's just very simple. It's a group of people that get together regularly around something that they do. So it could be job related, it could be hobby related, but something that you actually do. And the minute I heard about that, I was like, oh, I want to do that for product, because I couldn't find, 2010, becoming a product manager in Houston, I couldn't find other people to talk to about product. And even at that conference, there were plenty of developers, plenty of Scrum Masters, but no product owners. So it was years before I started to find other product managers and product owners.
So it's like your tribe. Like, where's the tribe of product managers?
Yeah, it's like the tribe. So over time, I started. When my kids were like, I got 4 kids, and when they were all old enough to like do their homework and or like self-sustain, I told the family, I'm like, once a month, I want to go to a networking event, and that was Agile Leadership Network here in Houston, and went there for about a year and a half, and then they had a speaker there that had asked a question of the audience, and I answered it, and she was like, "Oh, this guy's doing Agile," and that turned into a lot of questions, and they discovered like I was a product owner and asked me to speak on that, and I've been speaking nonstop ever since that. So back then, it was probably like 6 years ago now, but there still wasn't a lot of material out there for product manager, product owner. People spoke to a lot of other parts of software development. And through actually speaking is when I started to connect with other product managers and owners.
So there is a community now of product
managers? Yes, it's a long story, sorry. So about 3.5 years ago, I started co-founded with Ana Maria Garcia, one of my coworkers at Blinds.com, the Houston product community. We meet one Saturday morning a month, and from 9 to noon.
Where?
At the Improving Office on Beltway 8 in Richmond, right off there. And we have roughly an hour connecting, an hour learning, hour sharing, right? And I really tried to apply like good to great principles of like finding your the flywheel and like what you're focused on. So it's product and it's Houston. That overlap. If it's not in that Venn diagram, I don't give my attention to it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you have to be in Houston and in product to talk to the group. And we have a LinkedIn group where we share notes and that type thing. You have to be in Houston and in product to do that because product's a little different in Houston. We deal with we deal with life and death situations, and we deal with scale of infrastructure in ways that a lot of other places don't. So one of my mottos is like Houston has Houston problems and Houston needs Houston solutions. We can't necessarily look at the way somebody else has done it and just reapply that. So
how large is that community now?
We have about 750 people.
Really?
Yeah. And on any given Saturday morning, we have about 100 people that show up to that.
And how long did it take you to build that up to that level?
That was 7 years, but but 3.5 years ago when I started this, I was going to. I was like, if we have 10 people show up for this, that'll be wonderful. We had 65, then 75, then 100. And so I had a hypothesis. Why it's on Saturday morning, the traffic stinks so bad, right? Houston's an hour away from Houston. So first off, I was like, well, if there's no traffic, that's a plus for everybody. And then I was like, if it's on Saturday, we can have a leisurely conversation. There's no rush, right? And 9 to noon, that's 3 hours. But or again, another one of our mottos is, come when you can, leave when you want to. There's no expectation to stay that whole time.
It's been very fun to see that. I think that's also, one of the things we talk about on the podcast quite a bit is approaching things from a standpoint of giving.
Right.
You're there to give.
Yeah.
You're not there to get.
Yeah.
So, if people all come with that attitude, then, it removes a lot of barriers for those conversations.
That's a big principle we have. So I have a whole list of principles. I'm actually putting together a playbook. I'm about 3/4 of the way done the playbook. But
I'm looking forward to that.
One of the principles is, come to it with what value can I add to this person instead of what's in it for me, right? Because so much of what we, a lot of what these principles came out of was 7 years of me awkwardly trying to network in an ecosystem where I'm not in energy, I'm not in healthcare, and I'm not in aerospace, right?
Yeah.
So many awkward, when people would say, well, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I sell window blinds online. It's like crickets, right? Like you think that like somebody would be curious enough to like want to dig, but it was like, oh yeah, this guy's not cut of the same cloth. So.
Was there, I always have this problem of like, especially on opportunities like that, where, the product's not sexy, right? Oh,
No.
well, I'm going to build a company to sell
Right.
blinds online.
Right.
I mean, but that wasn't a barrier for you when you joined.
No, see, I caught the passion, I caught the vision, right? In that interview with Jay, like I validated kind of what I thought the vision was, and I signed up for the vision. Like that's, for me, it's signing up. I don't necessarily have to be the one that has the vision. I'm the one that can carry the vision and communicate the vision and have the consistency to see it through with a team of people.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's just super important and
yeah. It's
to
like
have as part of the
storytelling.
business. Yeah.
Storytelling is a core thing, core thing of being successful at product management. And I remember talking to somebody in the energy sector who transitioned from project management to product management. And they said at lunch, they're like, I'm just so sick of telling people the same thing over and over that we're trying to do. Don't they just get it? Like they're adults, they should get it. And I looked at them and said, you might want to consider a different career because that is product management. And when I talk about storytelling, that is telling that same story over and over again with the same excitement and sense of purpose and authenticity of the excitement of what you're trying to do. That gets people rowing in the same direction, excited about what they're working on, even if it's a mundane, to many people, a mundane product.
Why do you go to these startup development organizations?
I love product and I love the entrepreneurial journey, the hero's journey. I look at it as like a hero's journey. And I'm very good at storytelling. And I think I'm good. I think I'm all right. I'm all right. Let's put it that way. I don't want to brag. I'm all right at storytelling. But I love being able to talk to people about what they're trying to accomplish, the vision and everything, and give them, add to the framework of their storytelling in ways that they never thought of it before. That's the passion I have. And, there was, when I was younger and, even in my 40s, like I longed to be an entrepreneur and started some things. But in my 40s, and actually doing that, I realized, oh, I have entrepreneurial tendencies. I am not an entrepreneur, right? And I could never sleep at night, if I was a full-on entrepreneur, right? And I see what they deal with, and I'm not that type personality. I love the journey, I love the challenge, but I have no desire to be the CEO of a company.
Well, I mean, it is different. And like Elon says, it's like chewing glass and staring into the abyss.
Yeah, it's real.
And it does take a different personality. You you certainly can, there's a lot of fun things to do in business and problem solving, and a lot of need for guys exactly like you to like help things get done and get them done right.
Real quick, another reason I show up, right? I moved here in 2008. I don't have friends, family here in Houston. And it's a way that I've gotten to know people, and I've made some wonderful friends through that. And then also, around the time I started working with Station Houston, and so it was about 5-6 years ago, I always thought I'd kind of dip into Houston and dip out at some point, like after the kids were raised or something or other. So, one day I was at Station Houston and looking out over the city. It had a great view of the city there. And I had this moment where, I was in a great environment, great people around me. And I was like, you know what? Houston is the city I landed in, and Houston is the city I'm going to play for. So that's often why I show up is like, I'm here to play, and I'll go to the different events, get invited. Generally, if somebody asks me to do it, I try to say yes, even if it's not in that Venn diagram, but if it's here in Houston, I try to show up for it.
Go Houston.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's what's exciting about what's going on in Houston right now is just there does feel like there's a lot of people like yourself that we're trying to help collaborate, help Houston grow, help build the ecosystem, help give back.
It's what's been so neat about the past year is that a lot of us have become more aware of each other and how we can add value to each other.
Mhm.
That's been a wonderful thing as well. Code launch was a big thing for me this time last year, which is a startup competition. It's coming up in March 2nd this year again. But for me, walking into that last year, they asked me to judge, and seeing everybody under the roof at the same time, and the software developers and the doers, right, that actually pull off on these things, pull these things off. It was like, that was just great. That was an electrifying moment for me last year.
Yeah, I love Code Launch.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the competition. Well, I think the ecosystem really needs more of those blinds.com, successes. So having a startup, building it, exiting, being successful, getting acquired, but then also what comes out of that are the people that were originally involved and now they want to come and give back and mentor or start other startups, and have the whole cycle start over again.
Yeah, being some small part of that entrepreneur's journey, right? So the very first person that I did a mentor session with at Station Houston was Trevor Best at Syzygy, and they just closed some huge round last month, second round of investment there, and that's like, I'm not taking credit for that, but just to be part of that story is really cool to see.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, it's happening tens and tens of times over.
Well, I think we're going to see quite a few more unicorns come out of Houston.
I think so.
But they take a little while. Well, you had a few questions for me you wanted to ask.
Yeah,
so I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes.
I became aware of soft tech at Station Houston. Some of the demo days, you guys sponsored them, I remember.
Yeah.
When did you start the Venture Studio part of that?
Yeah, the Venture Studio, it's one of those, 5-year overnight successes. But we started it formally about 1.5 years ago. But about 5 years ago, I just had a real, interest and saw the lack of startup development organizations in Houston compared to what I saw on the West Coast in Silicon Valley, and everyone points to that as a much more mature market for startups. And so we reached out and researched what was available currently in Houston, and really it was very few things. The HTC, Houston Technology Center, and then which really wasn't anything to do with technology, kind of misnamed in my opinion. Yeah. And then there was Station Houston, which John Reale, JR had started up. And so we started just to try to get involved. That's like, who are the players? What's going on? What's available? We started sponsoring, we started showing up, starting talking to people, and just kind of understanding how we might plug into the community. And we started with trying to get an innovation lab going, which we had some moderate success with, and then we really leaned into what we saw as a model for a venture fund, basically standing up a venture fund with the studio, and then pairing it with our services as a differentiator, a unique selling proposition that usual accelerators don't have those pieces, right? So had a lot of startups coming to us that just didn't have any funding, and didn't see really much in the way of places that you could go and get mentorship. There were a few, right, like Station, but yeah, it's only been in the last year and a half, and now we've got our latest batch of 15 to 20 startups, and we'll have put
Yeah,
through.
was at the last demo. Yeah, that was quite a big number on stage at that
we
demo
had 21 plus companies there with like 300 people at the event. So it's come a long way in the last year. And the goal is to put 120 companies through over a 3-year period. And so far, so good.
That's great to see. Yeah, great to see.
And then, it's a venue for folks like you to come and also share their experience. They're all hungry for knowledge, right?
So I have one other question for you. I noticed you got Star Wars and Star Trek represented on the bookshelf. I love both, but it's rare that you find somebody that loves both because usually they're one or the other. Is that the case for you?
Yeah, I've always been one of those guys that, I like platform wars, even like gaming systems, like Nintendo versus PlayStation versus whatever. And it's like
Marvel versus DC.
Yeah, exactly.
I love both of them. I've read both of them forever.
Do I really need to choose? I mean, certainly when I was growing up, it was only Star Trek. There was no such thing as Star Wars. So definitely was a Trekkie and built all the plastic models over the years. And just finished William Shatner's book, Boldly Go, which I recommend. I highly recommend. I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, even though I'm a fan, I'd never read one of his books before, but it was highly entrepreneurial, actually, just about his philosophy in life. And then also it was quite a lot of empathy in the book as well. And just, here's this guy that's 91 years old and they're like, hey, you want to go to space? And he's like, sure. So, applying that kind of attitude to life, I think is fascinating. No, I love both. I have Legos. I watch The Mandalorian. I love Baby Yoda up there. I don't see they're both different, but you can enjoy both.
Right.
So. Well, I know you're a sci-fi fan like myself, and so speaking of my shelf, I have something for you.
Oh, well, thank you.
I love crazy socks. I got my Einstein silly socks on today, and so
nice. Oh, it's got the ears on it as well. Thank you.
Baby Yoda socks. Grogu.
All right, Grogu.
It could be Yoda or Grogu.
I'm really digging The Mandalorian. I'm glad that season 3 is coming out here pretty soon.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on, Wade. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It only took 3 years to get together to talk.
Perfect.
Yeah.